They called it an unauthorized structure and tore down the hand-built bridge my grandfather made. So when the HOA president's $5 million lakefront mansion started sinking into the mud, you'd think they'd realize you don't mess with a civil engineer who knows how water really works. Want to know how I turned their prized waterfront into a barren ditch? Keep reading. This intro hooks with instant conflict, vandalized family heirloom versus HOA tyranny, high-stakes revenge, a $5 million disaster they never saw coming. Mystery tease, how does an engineer drain a lake? Underdog vibe, one person versus an entire corrupt board. They bulldozed my grandfather's bridge, big mistake. I stood there, fists clenched, knuckles white, as the HOA's hired demolition crew revved up their excavator and tore into the weathered wooden planks of my grandfather's bridge. The sound of splintering oak echoed across the lake, each crack like a punch to my gut. "Stop!" I shouted, rushing forward, but one of the workers shoved me back. "Sorry, man. Orders from the HOA." For 30 years, that bridge had stood strong, hand-built by my grandfather, the summer before he passed. He'd carved his initials into the railing, smoothed every plank with his own hands. It wasn't just a bridge. It was his last gift to our family, the only way to reach our private dock without hiking half a mile around the lake. But Karen Whitmore, newly elected HOA president, real estate tycoon, and professional nightmare in a pantsuit, had decided it was an unauthorized eyesore. The hearing that was a joke. I'd fought back, of course. I dug up the original permits from the 90s, proving the bridge was grandfathered in. I even got a notarized letter from the original developer stating it was approved. But at the so-called hearing, which was really just Karen and her cronies sipping lattes, while they rubber-stamped my demolition order, she barely glanced at the documents. "Those permits are outdated," she said, waving her hand like she was swatting a fly. "The new bylaws clearly state all structures must be approved by the architectural committee." I argued, I begged. I even offered to rebuild it to their exact specifications. Karen just smirked. Rules are rules. The smug aftermath. As the last support beam crashed into the mud, Karen strolled over, designer sunglasses perched on her nose, her smile dripping with satisfaction. "You'll thank us later," she said. "This neighborhood has standards." Standards, right? Because the McMansions with their tacky gold fountains were classy, but my grandfather's handcrafted bridge was an eyesore. I watched as the crew packed up, leaving behind nothing but splinters and tire tracks in the dirt. My hands shook, not from sadness, but from pure white-hot rage. The moment I decided on revenge. That night I sat on my porch, staring at the lake, now cut off from me thanks to Karen's power trip. And then it hit me. I was a civil engineer. I'd spent a decade working on water systems, dams, and drainage projects. If anyone knew how to manipulate water, it was me. And if Karen wanted to play hardball, fine, but she had no idea what happened when you pushed an engineer too far. While Karen and her rich friends lounged on their docks, clinking champagne glasses like they owned the world, I was busy doing something far more satisfying, digging through decades of HOA records. And what I found? Their precious natural lake was a complete scam. The developer's dirty secret. Turns out back in the 1980s, the original developer, some shady real estate mogul named Richard Holloway, had dammed a small creek to create this so-called natural lake. Why? Because waterfront properties sold for double the price. But here's the kicker. The permits for that dam had expired in 1995. The HOA had been illegally maintaining it for nearly 30 years, skipping mandatory safety inspections, and never reporting it to the state. As far as the government knew, this lake didn't officially exist. I sat back in my chair, staring at the documents in disbelief. They'd been breaking the law for decades. And Karen, she knew. The smoking gun. Buried in a 2003 HOA meeting transcript, I found it the moment Karen, then just a board member, voted against renewing the dam permits because it was too expensive. "We've gotten away with it this long," the minutes quoted her saying. "Why start paying now?" My jaw dropped. This wasn't just negligence. This was fraud. Those $5 million lakefront mansions, their value was built on a lie. The perfect revenge. I could have gone to the authorities, could have filed a complaint. But where's the fun in that? No, if Karen wanted to hide the truth, I'd expose it in the most dramatic way possible. I grabbed my engineering manuals, pulled up old topographic maps, and started running calculations. That dam wasn't just illegal, it was poorly built. A few strategic adjustments, and the whole thing could collapse on its own. Legally, if the lake wasn't permitted, then draining it wasn't vandalism, it was correcting a violation. I grinned. Karen thought she'd won by destroying my bridge, but I was about to destroy her entire lake. The night the lake disappeared, the full moon cast long shadows across the silent neighborhood as I crept toward the dam at 2:17 a.m. My backpack held everything. I needed bolt cutters, a shovel, and the keys to a backhoe I'd borrowed from a construction site near the highway. Don't worry, I left a note saying, "Be back by dawn." The dam's weak spot. Up close, the dam was even flimsier than I'd thought, just a haphazard pile of boulders and compacted dirt, held together by rusted rebar and decades of neglect. No concrete, no proper spillway, just pure developer laziness. I climbed into the backhoe, fired it up, and got to work. One strategic scoop near the base, then another. Then, the sound of justice. A deep crack echoed across the water as the dam's foundation split. For a second, nothing happened. Then, whoosh, a wall of water exploded through the gap, roaring downstream like a scene from the Titanic. The force ripped apart the rest of the dam in seconds, sending boulders tumbling like pebbles. The lake churned, foamed, then began to drop fast. I scrambled to higher ground, watching in awe as millions of gallons of water vanished into the night. Sunrise on a mud wasteland. By dawn, it was over. Where glittering blue water once stood, there was now a stinking, sludge-filled crater. Docks hung uselessly in the air, their pilings exposed like broken teeth. Luxury yachts and kayaks sat stranded in the mud, tilted at ridiculous angles. And the lakefront mansions? Their pristine lawns now overlooked a wasteland of cracked mud and dying fish. The first scream of many. At 7:03 a.m., the first homeowner stepped outside, some finance bro in a monogrammed robe. His coffee mug shattered on the patio when he saw it. "What the hell?" By 8 a.m., the entire neighborhood was in hysterics. Karen Whitmore stormed out in silk pajamas, her face purple with rage, screaming into her phone. I watched from my porch, sipping coffee, as the reality set in for all of them. Their premium waterfront status? Gone. The morning after the lake disappeared, the neighborhood looked like a war zone. Homeowners in bathrobes stood, slack-jawed at the edge of what used to be their waterfront paradise, now just a mile-long mud pit buzzing with flies. And then came the scream. "You'll pay for this!" Karen Whitmore charged across her sludgy backyard like a deranged bull, her designer pajamas caked in muck. Her face was purple with rage, her perfectly manicured finger jabbing at my chest. "I'll have you arrested! I'll sue you into homelessness!" she shrieked. I just sipped my coffee. For what? Fixing your illegal dam? Her eye twitched. The lawsuit that went nuclear. True to her word, Karen mobilized the entire HOA. They sued me for $5 million. Destruction of property, emotional distress, even ecological terrorism. The local news ate it up. Revenge engineer drains elite lake. But in court, I dropped the one piece of evidence they never saw coming. "Your Honor," I said, sliding a folder to the judge, "this lake hasn't been legal since 1995. The room went dead silent as the judge flipped through the expired permits, the ignored violation notices, and Karen's own handwritten notes voting to skip dam repairs. The gavel falls. The judge's voice was ice cold. "You're telling me this HOA knowingly maintained an unpermitted dam for 30 years, and now you're suing the man who exposed it?" Karen's lawyer started sweating. "Your Honor, Case dismissed. But it got even better. The state slapped the HOA with a $200 SORNY fine for the illegal dam plus mandatory environmental restoration fees. The resignation heard round the suburb. Within a week, Karen voluntarily stepped down as HOA president. Rumor has it she moved to Arizona. And my grandfather's bridge? Rebuilt with a permit, a plaque, and an official apology from the new HOA board. As for the lake, let's just say nature's taking its course. The Great Lakeside Fire Sale, 6 months after the lake vanished. For sale signs sprouted across the neighborhood like weeds. The once coveted lakefront, mansions, now just expensive houses overlooking a mud pit, were suddenly worth less than a suburban duplex. Realtors whispered the truth. Waterfront premium? Gone. Buyers are offering 60% off asking price. Karen's old mansion, the one with the gold-plated Dock sat rotting on the market for a year before selling at a $3 million loss. Meanwhile, the neighborhood WhatsApp group, which I'd conveniently stayed in, became a 24/7 meltdown feed. We were promised permanent waterfront. My husband's clients won't even come over anymore. This is all your name's fault. I muted the notifications. Best soundtrack ever. My property's hidden ace. Here's what the HOA never checked. My land included the original creek bed, now the only legal. Water access left after the dam removal. Suddenly, surveyors were knocking on my door. We'll pay top dollar for your easement rights. Name your price for dock access. I smiled. Not for sale. Within a year, my property value doubled. The irony? Those snobby neighbors who voted to demolish my bridge, they now needed my permission to even see water. The HOA's pathetic olive branch. Last spring, the new HOA president, some nervous guy named Greg, showed up at my door with a fruit basket and a contract. We'll fast-track your bridge permit, no fees, he blurted. Just maybe convince the county to reconsider the lake, please? I glanced at the papers. Then at the hand-carved replica of Grandpa's bridge I'd already built with proper permits. Rules are rules, Greg. I shut the door. The fruit basket was decent, though. Epilogue, Grandpa's legacy. Now, the creek runs naturally again. Heron's Nest, where jet skis once roared. And every time I cross that bridge, I see Grandpa's initials in the wood, right where they belong. As for the HOA, they rewrote the bylaws. No unauthorized dams is now rule number 1. Final lesson? HOAs, stop power tripping. Engineers, document everything. Grandpa's bridges, touch them and lose a lake. Want more insane HOA drama, epic revenge stories, and justice served ice cold? Smash that like button if you drain a lake to spite Karen, too. Subscribe to HOA highlights for weekly neighborhood wars. Comment below, what's the worst HOA rule you've dealt with? Share this with someone who's battled an HOA tyrant. Because next time, the HOA bans lawn gnomes. And the revenge? Even sweeter.